If you care about democracy, you should be paying attention to Tennessee right now. We're going to talk about it on another episode of the Eight Black Hands. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Eight Black Hands. It's Sunday night, so that means that it's time for us to get together and talk about what we're going to do for the 8 million Black children. One of the things that we have to do for 8 million Black children in the United States is make sure that they have an operating democracy that provides for them the freedoms and the rights that they need to be their full selves. And we are trying to raise free people. We're not trying to reinstall slavery or Jim Crow, but it feels like we have opposition across the country that are attempting to do just that. Fellas, happy Easter. Welcome to the show. How y'all doing today?
Oh, well, good to see y'all. Good to see y'all.
Good to see y'all too.
Everybody.
Raymond, I'm digging the new hat style. I don't know what we're working on, bro, but it's a little Chicago. It's not East Coast. I don't know what this
coolie
is.
high. You got a little coolie high going on. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Hey, I want to shout myself out. I burned 1,665 calories today. Peloton fam in the building. Let's get it.
I saw you doing it online, and it made me tired just watching. I felt like I burned calories watching you. That was awesome. I have a Peloton in the basement too. Ask me how many times it's been turned on.
How many times it's been turned on?
Woo, not many. Anyways, moving on. Bygones. Sometimes we make purchases that we're not supposed to purchase. Fellas, tonight we want to talk about Tennessee, but Tennessee, Sharif has said this before, America is Mississippi. And we used to say that when Mississippi was the worst that Mississippi was the worst that the United States had to offer in terms of racial politics. But actually, Mississippi is looking not so bad these days in comparison to things.
I don't know about that, bro. We just had that water fiasco in Jackson.
I mean, after Flint, what's the problem with a little water every now and then? But, it's like the rest
of what is he talking about?
Now you disavow. That's a disavow.
Okay, let me clarify what I was saying was I can't beat up on Mississippi for things that happen everywhere else. We try and locate everything in the South, but the North is as racist as the South. And by me mentioning Flint, what I mean is Flint poisoned its residents, poisoned the water of its residents.
No. The state of Michigan poisoned Flint residents.
Okay, it's a nice technicality, but our government was poisoning people in a northern city with northern politics and northern politicians. It wasn't the South. It wasn't some place that you can say is some backwater. And what it turned out after that, and this isn't the topic of tonight's show, but what I will say is the way things export. When you looked at Flint, it turned out that there were 27 communities in the United States that had a worse problem than Flint did with the water in terms of being poisoned and increasing by 300%, 400%, 500% the number of kids with special ed because of the poison in the water. So there's that. So now Tennessee is becoming that place, and it's because there is a trio of lawmakers in Tennessee called the Tennessee Three, and now it's the Tennessee Two, because the Tennessee Three were three people that came to the floor of the House floor and protested shortly after the shootings that took place there, the tragic shootings in Nashville. They were calling for major reform in gun legislation to protest. They took over the House and bullhorns and got loud and did the protest thing. The result, the net of all of that, is that Republican lawmakers got on the floor and did some, good old boss hog, Dukes of Hazzard style, talking about we should get rid of these folks. And out of the three, one of them got spared, the white woman. Two brothers actually were not spared. And that's the net. That's where we are now, I think, with we have had duly elected people removed from office by their opponents their opponent colleagues within the House. And to add another little ripple, and we have a guest tonight who can help us understand all of this, because this is the part I really don't understand. If you expel members, there's another body that has to appoint the replacements. The body that is wants to appoint their replacements wants to appoint them right back into the House.
Hopefully.
But the state has said now, if you do that, the Republicans, we're going to whip you again. We're going to double lash you now.
Yeah.
We're going to take the money
Yeah.
Away from your local area.
Yeah. That's $350 million. We can clear it with the senator, but I think it's $350 million for Memphis. Is the cash amount that they're trying to leverage to make sure that whoever doesn't run again.
This is so crazy. If you care about democracy and you care about black progress and racial progress, keep your eye on this story. We have someone tonight.
Classic white male.
Well, see, you had to go and make it racist, bro. There you go. Just kidding. Our guest tonight is Senator London Lamar from Tennessee, who actually can give us much more of a view of this. Senator Lamar is no stranger to speaking the real truths when the real truths need to be spoken within the House there, and I'm sure she can help us out. She's a member of the Democratic Party and the Tennessee Senate. She represents District 33. Correct me if I'm wrong, if that is wrong, but yeah, represents District 33 in Tennessee. So welcome, Senator.
Hi, how you doing?
Woo, we wonder how you doing.
Yeah, for real.
Like this been going on, so sometimes you gotta laugh to keep from crying, but we're staying strong.
This isn't like strikingly similar to what happened in Texas when the Texas Senate folks had to come to DC. It gives that vibe. So, Senator, how you holding up? How your mentals?
So that's a good question. For the most part, I'm fine. So I definitely have a good family and friends who have been checking up on me. I'm very intentional about creating a good place of peace. I've been very good at kind of like entering this time at pieces of a time and not fully bringing myself into it because it's a lot. It's heavy. It's actually very traumatic because while I haven't experienced this extent of being reprimanded, I have been reprimanded a few times by Republicans for speaking out on issues of race. So to see them go this far with it to two young Black men is very disheartening, especially as the youngest woman in the General Assembly as well. And one of the youngest individuals in the legislature, I'm oftentimes feel the disdain for young people like myself in office, but I am also equally motivated. I am so thankful that things went the way it did in regards to the national attention, the support, the light that is shined on our state. I really feel like for the first time, people are going to hear what we've been saying for the last couple of years. And now we can truly make a real ask around help on how we kind of change the dynamics of our legislature. But it's been mentally and emotionally heavy just to see what I call a political lynching last week with these two young men. But nevertheless, they've been vindicated and we go see them back in the legislature this week. So it's kind of like, I'm kind of want to know how the Republicans doing because this is the biggest L they've taken in a while and it's well deserved.
Well,
I'm doing fine.
Indeed.
I'm doing well. I am blessed and highly favored.
He's really not, but go ahead.
and that doesn't matter. But so
it absolutely matters. She said how the Republicans doing. I'm just telling you, I'm doing great.
Are you a Republican?
I am.
Incredulous, right?
I mean, that's not,
Yeah, come on, sis.
Come on
on that.
Why? I just question I always ask people why is there why?
Mental stability. Is that what you question?
Listen,
is that what you said?
I provided a holding environment for you. I asked you a question to make sure that you were safe.
What's your why?
Right?
Let's hear this.
Don't skirt the issue, bro.
Yeah.
My why is because I don't want to give my money away. Like I don't. Y'all can have that socialism stuff. I want my money.
You are giving your money away no matter what.
Anyway,
you're giving it away no matter what.
I decide how much I want to give it away.
No, you don't.
Absolutely do.
You have zero stay.
You pulled a Trump on everybody.
Yeah,
I did not pull a Trump on everybody. Hey, Reef, stop reaching, bro.
That's what it sounds like.
It's the second time you've come for my political activity in the last couple of days.
I think you lost count of I think you lost count of like dozens of times. Only the second time. I think I'm like 32nd time.
That's why they suspended your ass off Twitter.
That's all right. I'm back.
All right. So listen, Senator, you said something that I just want to know for the record is, so you said we will see them back.
Mm-hmm.
Will we see them back? This is a fact. They're coming back. And how?
So let me break down that process. Is a good question that I think you mentioned in your introduction. So when someone is expelled or removed or they retire from the General Assembly, the county's governing body makes an appointment to that seat in the interim. If it's less than a year before the next reelection, it's an appointment with no special election. If it's more than 12 months before the next election, they make an appointment for the interim, but a special election is called. Because they have more than 12 months before they have to run again in 2024, they have to run another special election for their seat. But in the interim, they will be appointed back to the seats until they go through the special election process. It's the same way of, I actually got into the Senate that way. I was in the state house. My former senator who had the seat before me was expelled. And I was appointed to the state Senate through the Shelby County Commission. Because it was less than a year, I was able to finish out the duration of the term. And I turned around and actually ran for the seat and was officially elected last year. So it's not uncommon for local governing bodies to make appointments to seats until their election comes around. So the Metro Council, the Metro Council in Nashville has 40 members, and 29 of them have come out publicly saying they're going to reappoint. They're going to vote for Justin Jones to be reappointed this Monday at 4:30. That is when the meeting is set. So we are anticipating Justin Jones will be back in the legislature by 5 o'clock on Monday, which is tomorrow. If they can go ahead and get them in, vote, and then get the paper sent over to the Capitol, which we're about a block away. As far as Justin Pearson in Shelby County, the Shelby County Commission is hosting a meeting at 1:30 on Wednesday. Right now, we expect that he has the 7 votes. The makeup of the Shelby County Commission is 13 members, 9 Democrats, and 4 Republicans. And none of the Republicans are going to vote for him. 1 Democrat is in limbo, but he's supposed to have the rest of the 8. 1 person's out of the country, so we're trying to hold on to that's actually 7. So we're anticipating him getting back to the legislature by Wednesday after evening. So they will sit in these seats in the interim, and then they're going to have to run for a special election. That election will be on the county's, the local ballots this year in the upcoming election. So in Shelby County, our local election is going to be in October, and in Davidson, I think it's either October or September, but don't quote me on that.
So they will come back for an interim, and then they can be reelected to their actual seats.
Yeah, man, and we have 2 to 3 weeks left of session, so we should be into at this point. We're preparing to gavel out. We're trying to pass the budget these next 2 to 3 weeks, and then once we pass the budget, pretty much business is done, and we're going to probably conclude session by the minimum the last week of April.
All right, got a question. So it's the Tennessee 3, and not the Tennessee 2. And so there was a person that didn't get expelled. Can we expand on why that person didn't get expelled? Because she did the same thing.
Well, the Republicans saved the white woman. That's why.
Okay.
So, but no, seriously, it was 3 of them, because it was 3 of them who approached the well in an act of protest. They were resolutions were filed to expel all of them. Justin had the votes they expelled him. Gloria stayed by 1 vote. Yeah. And then Pearson was gone. Now, it's my personal opinion that I think they strategically found the votes to keep Gloria.
She said that. She said it.
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of them are trying to divert from the whole race issue. No, I definitely think they say their own, because respectfully, but Gloria came in when I did a couple of years ago, and she's been acting up numerous times.
Let's go, Glo.
So, I mean, but she's cool or whatever. But I had hesitancy around her leading me to. Luckily, this went the right way for them. but this could have went so wrong. And I think that it's fair for me to say, I don't care what anybody think about it, that I was hesitant on them following her and her leadership because she is a white woman. And I've seen when a lot of times when Black people and white people try to do these progressive acts of protest and try to do acts of disobedience, whether it's good trouble or not, we the ones that get in trouble and they get saved. It's just like the criminal justice system. How white people are treating the criminal justice system is totally different than African Americans. And so we have to be very careful. It's just a blessing that it's gone well for these two, because I was so concerned that it was going to go wrong. But I don't know why they saved her. I think it was definitely strategic.
Yeah. Senator, let me ask you a quick question. You talked about it could have gone worse. Can you expand on that? Like, what do you mean it could have gone worse?
So what if they didn't get this national attention, right? What if they didn't have the pressure of the president, the vice president, all of these young people across the city and the states and the country rallying behind him? What if they didn't have these people calling these local elected officials to get them back in office? They would have been expelled, and we couldn't have guaranteed that they would have been put back in their seats if the media didn't catch on to this story and what was going on. I think that it was they chose the right issue to rally behind the fact that 3 white kids were killed. Because, respectfully, I've been advocating for the fact that we got to do something about gun violence all year by myself, because Black kids been dying day to day in Memphis and don't nobody bat an eye. And I had a problem with that because I'm here by myself. Some of the same bills they're proposing now, I already proposed them this session, but where was everybody? I had a few moms demand action come behind me, but didn't nobody care. But when it happened to some white kids and some white folks at a rich elitist private school, now the whole world's like, oh my God. And it's bad. Don't get me wrong. Nobody deserves to be killed by mass shootings, but there is discrimination and outrage. And so they were smart enough to pick the right issue to jump in there behind, because the world was already watching what was going on at this particular Covenant shooting. So I think there were several pieces that were lined up to ensure that what they did, one, made sense, but 2, they was going to come out of this situation with a win.
That is so important that you named that and that you mentioned that. I think in our last episode, we had another Tennessee gent that came to talk to us who was adjacent to Nashville. And I made mention of that. I was like, there's kids that are getting killed in Memphis on the daily, and nobody's making us think about that. So thanks for naming that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that same week, I had a mass shooting in my district in Memphis outside of Yo Gotti's club. 7 people were shot. Last weekend, this girl got shot outside Kirby High School, which is in my district. And that's just things like this happen all the time. Juvenile crime is a big problem because gang members are, recruiting young people to do a lot of the mass shootings. So whether it's a mass shooting from a white person, a Black person, it's all an issue. But we definitely just have to do something about it. It's interesting, to my Republican friend, I will say I've been very intentional about how I advocate being in the Republican legislature. So while I think the Republicans have gotten so many things wrong regarding policies around gun control, the governor, because of this, came out with the SRO, which are the school resource officers, basically school security guards. And a lot of progressives are like, we don't want that. That's not going to solve the issue, blah, 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 blah. And I can agree with the fact that I don't think it solves the issue at hand per se. But am I going to deny the Republicans' plan to put security guards in every school? Hell no.
Absolutely not. Nope.
Because we got gangbangers and gangs and fights going on in Black schools where we need actual on-hand security. So it's interesting how I've had to, as me personally, have had to break away from polarized groups and what they feel like are solutions and come up with my own solutions for my own people, because it's a little bit of everything. And I think that's what, legislating in the Tennessee General Assembly in a minority looks like, is You have to figure out what are they proposing and how is that going to benefit your community, while also holding them accountable to other pieces of legislation that is going to help your community. And so it's not an either or for me, it's an and in both. How do I get what you're doing and what you're doing and make sure I can bring wins back to my community as best as possible?
One question that I have is about this. We've talked a lot in this story right now about the expulsions. And that feels like it's becoming the story. But the story before the expulsions was a flashpoint, a moment in time to hold people accountable for the gun lobby, for the amount of these, how tragically ordinary it has become to shoot up schools, first of all, and how kids aren't safe. That was the original story. And young people, what I see from a distance, from Minnesota, looking at you all from a distance, what I see is people storming and getting loud and saying this is the moment. Has the flashpoint of the moment been taken away? Has anything doused the flashpoint of the moment of holding Republicans accountable for guns been limited by this other story about the expulsions?
Oh, absolutely. One thing the Republican Party in Tennessee know how to do is they know how to pivot. And the moment that they got up there and they decided to expel them, that became the headline. Then the Speaker of the House came up and said, this is an insurrection. Then that made everybody mad, and everybody forgot about the guns. So they responded to the fact that he called them insurrectionists. And then they actually got expelled. And then now it's the race thing, like 2 black men got expelled, which is something we got to focus on, like all of those things. But the Republicans don't want to do anything about gun control. They don't care about the mass shooting. They don't care about black kids dying in Memphis, which I've been trying all year. They don't care. They believe their right to bear arms far outweighs any responsible approaches or common sense approaches to gun violence and gun reform. And I have my own personal reason I don't want to talk about today why I feel like their obsession with guns, because I just don't want to put those conspiracy theories out there. But what I will say is, when I sit on Senate Judiciary, I'm the only black person on Senate Judiciary. And they after that school shooting, they voted that we cannot even hear any more gun bills in the Senate Judiciary to come through. So that meant any bills that we had left to address gun reform could not be heard, because they did not want to do anything about gun violence and gun prevention. The governor's response to that was, I'm gonna give every school a school resource officer. I mean, I'll take it, but that's their response to gun issues. The Republicans in the state house didn't want to do anything about it. So they go with the expulsion and the news titles and let that flutter, because they want to take the attention away from doing anything about gun violence. So they're not going to do anything. Even though what they did actually hurt their brand more than helped, they're still not going to do anything about gun violence. I mean, murders have gone up 40% in Memphis, and they about to lower the gun age to 18. Like, they don't care. They oftentimes say it's your personal responsibility to use a gun correctly. And it's so interesting because they took the permitting system away in Tennessee. So we now have permitless carry. And I'm a proud gun owner. I'm going to tell you that. Like, I'm all about having guns as individuals. But one thing I did do was I took the classes. I got educated on the laws. I know the information I need and the repercussions on gun ownership. And I tell them all the time, I said, well, would you give your 18-year-old a car without taking a driver's class and going to take the driving test to make sure they know how to use this deadly vehicle? And they all said no. And my thing is, well, why would you do the same thing with guns? You know, a car don't kill a person. The person behind the car does something reckless and kills somebody. And I get that the same philosophy with guns, but you're not putting reasonable barriers and approaches in place to ensure that people who are not supposed to have guns don't have them with the background checks. People who have guns know the laws. People who have guns know how to use them. So we're expanding guns without having any sort of responsibility and common sense approach to how to get those things. And I think that one thing Democrats fail is we grab on to take the guns away, ban all guns, no guns, no guns. Well, that's a losing argument on the Republican side, because once you say that, they cut you, they're not listening to you anymore, versus coming up with reasonable approaches to reducing unwanted guns on the streets so that you can at least meet each other halfway. So I think everybody's doing it wrong, to be honest. And I think that we are just kind of digging ourselves in the hole. And I just don't think it's going to get better.
Now, not being a Republican or a Democrat, I will say this, like, as a third-party observer of the two, I don't see a Democratic equivalent to the NRA on this issue, right? So I don't see that there's some lobby, some, like, anti-gun lobby that is pushing the Democrats to do anything other than just want to protect our kids and make sure that dumb, crazy people don't get guns. You just mentioned a driver's license. I have a kid at the age of where he's going to be taking his test this summer, right? He's got several friends that failed that test, right? He went and took a license. Like, some of them came back with the license, some of them didn't. Some of them are driving now, some of them aren't. Now, there's nothing anti-car about that.
Right.
There's nothing anti-car about that. That's just like, I don't want to drive from here to the store and encounter a whole bunch of crazy people that shouldn't be behind the wheel, right?
Senator, I want to follow up on Chris's point and continue down this path of, like, common sense gun laws, but I also want to kind of add on to that, to Chris's point, and you kind of made this point. How do Republicans in Tennessee respond when you make the comparison around cars and driver's license? Like, what's the conversation like when you raise this as a parallel type of discussion?
It's so funny because I'll talk about those things, and because the NRA has a stronghold on them, they'll still vote no, but come to me after the fact in the break room like, oh, that was a good analogy. You're right about that. I'm not necessarily against it, but my hands are tied. So I think that's the accident question. Yeah, it's asking that question. Actually, to me, wants me to go down the path of talking about the dangers of having a supermajority. Because what the Republicans are not doing is they're not listening to common sense approaches anymore. They're not listening to people like myself who are rational around gun laws and other laws, who can meet them halfway. They're listening to interest groups who are completely dominating their thought process on particular issues such as this, where they are even holding their own breaths on these particular issues when they're voting, versus being able to come to the table and having rational conversations about safe approaches to guns. It's so interesting because, we had a permit. They changed it to permitless carry in 2019, right? But a Republican DA came up with the permitting system in Tennessee, get the background check, take the class, and, get the education or whatever. When the Beretta facility came, Beretta makes guns or whatever, and the NRA started pumping more money in Tennessee, that's when permitless carry came. So you see the shift as the Republican supermajority has tightened the increase in interest groups like the NRA and other gun lobby groups on particular legislation like this are becoming more powerful. I got another example. This is like the third year I'm pushing a particular bill which came up with common sense approaches to reducing gun violence. And in this particular legislation, which is a multi-agency approach to gun violence, I will get the public health department to deem gun violence as a public health issue, get TBI to make recommendations to the legislature, get the Department of Labor to come up with youth employment programs, get hospitals to have violence intervention programs, and get the Department of Education to come up with conflict resolution. Now, when I first presented this bill, and I was in the State House at the time, I had the votes on the Republican Criminal Justice Subcommittee. I got the votes. The day before I was presenting my bill, the NRA came in and said, this is going to reduce the amount of guns that we are able to sell, vote against her bill. And all my votes from the Republicans went away because of one person, the NRA lobbyists. And so it's an example of they can actually agree with you on a lot of common sense approaches, which I worked hard on that bill to come up with. But one interest group can change their mind and they're too scared to go against them.
But do you think if more Black people, and I've talked about this as someone who's a legal gun owner here in Virginia, Do you think if more Black people owned guns and it was in a very public way that would change their mind?
While I actually agree with more lawful Black gun owners, absolutely. Again, I'm a proud gun owner. Me and my daddy talk about guns all the time. It's like my daddy-daughter thing. I don't think it would change their approach. I think they would be smart enough to have token Black people like, yeah, that's why we want to expand guns. Look how many Black people got them too. I don't think I just see that backfiring so much.
Okay.
But I just do agree that Black people, lawful Black people, should get educated on gun usage, should own guns. I think that especially for me, it's so interesting. I bought a gun because I was scared of many of the white supremacist Proud Boys attacks I was hearing. Now they shifted to the fact that I'm scared of my own people sometime in Memphis, Tennessee, getting carjacked. That's why I carry my pistol all the time. So it's like, it's a tough
argument. Senator, yikes. Reef, jump in here, buddy.
Yeah, no, I mean, you raised so many good points, particularly around the supermajority. We talk about that a lot, like being Black in America and the supermajority. How dangerous is that? Because everybody talks about democracy, and America likes to, promote that they are the #1 democracy in the world. But, when you are, marginalized and you don't have the numbers to outvote, people who have like these racist mindsets, then it becomes, really challenging. And, so I could see that, just the danger of a supermajority, because we see that our experience in America has been that in a lot of places, minority of anti-racist, majority of, pro-racism. And, while some of those dynamics have changed, we still see that, that's going a lot. You mentioned their hands are tied, and it's similar to educators. Sometimes you hear educators, behind the scenes, they were like, yeah, that was really racist. Like, why didn't you stand up and say something at that, in the moment, at that school board meeting or whatever? And they're like silent on, when it comes to those, those votes. But, my question is around the youth, like how are you seeing on the ground? Like, we saw them, showing up. We saw them, talking about the Tennessee 3. We saw them before that, like really standing up about, the gun violence. How are people working with the youth to continue that activism, that level of activism and organizing at this point?
I think that what I was one of the bright spots in such a dark week was seeing so many young people come together. Being the youngest woman in the General Assembly and being the youngest woman and the youngest African American to ever serve in Tennessee Senate history. One of the main things I ran on beyond the issues that were facing my community was the fact that we need more young representation to help further and create a world where everybody is loved, everybody's heard, and everybody feels supported. And to see them galvanize in a way, especially around these 2 young Black men, is inspiring. I felt like finally, like the issues that are impacting Black youth in Memphis will finally be heard, because you got young Black men and young Black women who are able to comprehensively talk about why so many youth are plagued by crime and having lack of education and resources in their thoughts. You see so many youth talking about many of the struggles around mental health and how we can help curb those issues that they are facing. You see so many youth talking about why it's so hard for them to afford college or any of these challenges. And I am really faithful that the young will save this country. And they are now inspired and they're galvanized. And I think that's why I am so committed to the work that I'm doing, because I felt like the people we have in office are not representative of the people we actually represent. Mm-hmm. Young people under the age of 40 are the largest base of eligible voters in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Actually, if every young person voted under the age of 40 were registered and voted, the outlook on the state General Assembly would actually be different. It is that our vote and our voices have been so suppressed over the decades that there is so much voter apathy around there. And so, which has contributed to us getting elected officials on local, state, and federal level who is not representative of the largest base and the largest economic basis in our state. And now this particular situation has opened their eyes and people are watching. And I'm hopeful about so many things that can change. Especially, you know, personally, just being biased because I'm a person of Memphis, and I see how Black youth are attacked, how they feel deprived of resources, how they're losing hope, how they feel like politics is not working on their behalf. And that is representative of how the court systems are made, how they deal with crime, how they dealing with education. So many people not wanting to work with them, but I'm hopeful things can change and these young men will be the stars that we need in such a dark sky. As we move forward for young people. So I'm excited. They're about to be at the Capitol tomorrow. We got another rally at 4:00, I'm hearing. And, you know, I've just never seen anything like that in my life. It's great.
Yeah. No, it's definitely great to see, you know, youth, you know, just taking charge and people giving them the room and space and, you know, supporting them. So that's the intergenerational movement that we've always needed. So it's great that, you know, you all, as you said, despite the you know, unfortunate, you know, travesty and tragedy that occurred, you know, it's great to see this, you know, this happening. I think it's an opportunity to continue this organizing and amplification of the issues of the youth. So it's dope.
Yes, sir. So in a lot of these red states, you see this attack on critical race theory. The majority of the folks that are talking about it don't even really know what the hell it is. We have an in-person race scholar who I would like for him to walk us through this real life example of critical race theory that we just saw with the Tennessee 3, so that we can frame this in a manner in which folks can understand exactly what critical race theory is. Sir.
So here's the thing, right? I think that when I think about what's currently happening now in critical race theory, it's important to place this in historic context, because as someone who utilized critical race theory to write my dissertation, and very public about my commitment to CRT as a theoretical framework for me to think about the world as a researcher, but also just about systems. The article it was by Jamar Tisby. And one of the things that I appreciated about his effort with what's going on in Tennessee that stood out was his connection to history and the way in which this is very much aligned to something called the Redeemers, which essentially were Democrats in the South many years ago. And so I think when we think about the system that is bringing this about, and I tie this into the Senator, one of the questions I have for you, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on critical race theory, but when we add a historic element to this, what has happened in the past to Black legislators in Tennessee to help give our audience some context? Because that's one of the fundamental elements of critical race theory, is that it's connecting the history of systems of oppression and race to our current understanding when we think about housing, education, so on and so forth. Like, what's the history of Black folks in the legislators in Tennessee?
So essentially, Tennessee was one of the first states to pass a critical race theory ban, which means they put a limitation on what history can be taught in relation to race, gender, and other minority statuses in this state. Essentially, what I can tell you what happens to me. Let me tell you what happened to me to make it real. When I was elected in 2018, the day after I was elected, I made a Facebook video and I was looking at these CNN exit polls talking about how the majority of white people in Tennessee vote Republican. And I remember that year, there was a lot of race baiting in the election rhetoric from the two parties. So I made a video talking about how Tennessee has an issue with race. It can be racist and that all white people vote Republican and things like that. So the local Republican Party found this video and they sent it everywhere and exploited me. So I remember A lot of Republicans in the House were saying, oh, she should be censured, she should be reprimanded. And they were also floating the idea of expulsion around. So I had Black legislators call me and say, just send a letter and apologize and they'll let it go. So because I was so scared and I was new, I didn't know what to do. I sent the letter out saying, I apologize. I wasn't trying to offend nobody. I was, trying to bring, more education to the issues of race. That was fine. Came in, quietly and started building relationships with people, starting to get to know them. But that particular year, I had very common sense legislation I was pushing, and I couldn't get none of my bills passed. And one Republican who I ended up building a good relationship with came to me and said, he was like, look, I'm just gonna go ahead and let you know, the skimmy, you're not passing the bill this year. And I said, why? What did I do? He was like, it's about that video. People are still mad at you about that video for saying something. And the Speaker of the House at that time was able to make that decision. So I took it like a big girl. I said, okay, well, what I'll do is I'll start to get to know people to kind of, smooth it over with those who had reservations about who I was and the fact that I was speaking out about race issues. Then comes at the end of my freshman year, the Speaker of the House got caught saying the N-word. So I was vindicated in a way because he reprimanded me and him and his Republican friends for speaking out against racism. And I was the only freshman my freshman year out of 30 new freshmen that did not get to pass a piece of legislation. So the next year I was more vocal because they were on edge about the fact that was an issue. That's when you start hearing the conversations about critical race theory. I wore that t-shirt about, I'm Black, not a person of color one day on the State House floor. I couldn't speak on the floor that day because I wore that t-shirt. So they took my speaking privileges away. I was oftentimes not invited in leadership rooms because I was the only person in history to pass a ban on Nathan Bedford Forrest out of any committee. Representative Justin Jones and he was an activist then before he's in legislature. He and I led the charge. I took the legislative charge on getting the Nathan Bedford Forrest statue removed. That year, the critical race theory bill actually passed. From there, just last week in the Senate, one of my colleagues from Memphis pushed a bill and passed it that banned local governments for studying reparations because the Shelby County Commission allocated money to study reparations, which is obviously an all-Black county, which is Memphis, because legislators were upset that we were studying reparations. They threatened that they was going to take the $350 million from Shelby County. So he had to pass a bill to keep that money in Shelby County to ban reparations. That same day, a bill from Senator Hensley, who's, I don't really care if he knows, he's not a good person. He was further pushing a bill that banned colleges and universities from talking about critical race theory. So we went from K through 12, now to college, now to also censoring people who talk about race in the legislature. The topic that I champion the most is Black maternal health. Every year except this year, because I just kind of got sick of being denied, I will put up a resolution to honor Black Maternal Health Week because it's a nationwide thing. They would not pass my resolution. Anytime you put anything up to celebrate Black people exclusively, they will not pass it. So these are underlying things they've been doing in order to censure and shut down the conversations about race.
And so the other thing I want to tag onto this when it comes to critical race theory is one of the interesting moments that I have found with over 25 years in education and in youth development is there was a great project done by the Ed Trust in Tennessee where they talked to young folks in the state about all of the rhetoric and legislation around critical race theory and what it means for their education. When you think about what's happening currently in this discussion with the two brothers getting kicked out, all of the conversations around guns or lack thereof, which is a whole other way that we can frame it, how are you hearing young people in your community talk about this?
That's a hard question because I feel like part of them have been silenced. They speak out on social media about how much they pretty much hate the Tennessee legislature, how much they hate this state. You know, I hear a lot of young people talk about when they get older, they want to leave. When they go to college, they want to leave because of the things that they're hearing. Until recently with the two, I didn't hear many of them talk about they wanted to go to college. Because of the things they hear, it's like they don't want to get involved in the voting process. It's made it hard for me to engage them because instead of going in completely, they're saying, I don't want to deal with this at all. I'm going to lose. It's a losing battle. So they've just recently, with the two young men, I've heard the conversation pretty changed, somewhat changed in their morale change. And they felt inspired. But for the most part, it's killed young people's desire to get involved. I mean, the only thing that you've seen a little spike is the presidential elections because of the whole Trump partisan dynamic plus the Democrat partisan dynamic. That's helped a little bit. But when you kind of trickle down to state and local elections, young people don't vote. And the race of voter turnout among young people is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. It's also trickling down to the education. Like, while I will say people of color and minority groups have been under attack, they now transition to the LGBTQ community. LGBTQIA plus issues have been a big deal for young people because this Gen Z generation is kind of the first generation to truly embrace that holistically. And I saw a group I actually tell you a story, but 2 weeks ago, Ed Trust or one of the education groups brought a group of young people up to advocate against the bill to ban teachers from using the correct pronouns that they want to be identified as. And it was a very traumatic situation for me to watch, to see those young people come up and testify in a committee, sit in that audience, you know, hopeful that these legislators, all of them Republican at step one, would vote in their favor and listen to their testimony in hopes that they would not pass the bill to ban the use of pronouns that are not their biological sex. And every single one of them Republicans voted yes on the bill, and the one Democrat voted no. And they all came up to our floor, and the cries and the screams of those young people was very traumatic. And what the conversation was is that I hate this place. A few of them saying I want to run against them or whatever, but most of them was a huge disdain for the state and the political process. And so I am very concerned until now at how young people will continue to engage going forward. But I'm hopeful that they still stay engaged despite many of the discriminatory policies that come out of the state, from race to LGBTQ issues, to healthcare, even to women's rights like myself. It's been hopeful. I've said to myself a couple of times, man, why am I going to stay here? It's a lot, but hopefully things turn around and morale builds back up, even among myself.
Yeah, well, we're glad you're there.
Yeah, glad you're there too. And then also you mentioned something about higher education. And so one of the things that happens at HBCUs is that the majority of them are underfunded. You see in instances in which they do fund them, they flourish. Like, for example, the Morgan State University is now flourishing because they're receiving money equal to amounts that are given to the University of Maryland, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and that system, right? And so there's some things that are happening at Tennessee State University that folks may not know anything about. Can you shed the light on what's going on at Tennessee State?
Yeah, when you mentioned that, I was like, TSU was the first thing to come to my head because TSU has been under attack by the state of Tennessee. First and foremost, Tennessee was owed something called the Land Use Grant Fund. And for so long, Tennessee never granted them the funds they were owed. So it built up to like almost $500 million. But shout out to Representative Harold Love out of Nashville. He was able to work with this governor to get TSU the money that they are owed. They cut it up in like two parts, and I hope I'm getting all of it correct. But for the most part, it's being broken up in two parts. Again, $250 initially, then another $250 the next year, which I think is next year. And all of a sudden, their board of trustees and their school's reputation is under attack by the state legislature. All of a sudden, They don't know how to run their school. Their board of trustees needs to be disbanded. They're having hearings. They're trying to get rid of the school leader. They're trying to take over their board of trustees. Well, really, I heard the tea is that the state wanted them to use their contractors for some of the work that needed to be done. TSU didn't want to, and that's why, you know, there's a big issue because the state didn't want to give them that money and their people couldn't take advantage of them contracts. But that's just my personal tea that I heard. But it's essentially they're trying to take over their boards and disrupt the reputation as a result of them getting that money. And I think that is so wrong. And now all of a sudden the president's under attack. You're seeing all these TSU students coming up to the state advocating, but even from my young schools, our HBC, I staple HBCU, TSU is under attack by Republicans, and no other school in the state is under attack when they have equally or some similar challenges that the school is facing. Their reputation is not nearly being scarred the way that TSU has been scarred. And don't get me wrong, they have had challenges when it comes to housing, scholarships, but they're not acknowledging the fact that TSU had a drastic increase in admissions. Students wanting to come to HBCUs, wanting to come to Tennessee. And so it's also symbolic because they did that to TSU and they did this to Mason, Tennessee. Tennessee gave $500 million to get the Ford Motor Company to come to West Tennessee outside of Memphis. So the area that they're coming to is also called Mason, Tennessee, which is an all-Black town of Black folks. So they have to bring money to do infrastructure and other different projects in Mason, Tennessee, and they will have to get permission from this all-Black elected board in this small town. So the state tried to come in and disband their elected body and their power because they didn't want them to have say-so on what Ford is able to come in and do. And I mean, that's how they do Black entities. So they're
eminent domain.
Eminent domain. They're doing it to Black farmers. I just retweeted a story about that. So the state uses its power to dismantle Black institutions, not only school-wise, but even Black bodies, Black governing bodies and Black farmers and homeowners. And it's been the same throughout the decades, but these stories have usually gone untold and they've been able to get away with it. But people are starting to speak out against this now.
But yet the 18 violations, and I got to name it as a college football dude, that the University of Tennessee had, not only did they duck and dodge the NCAA, the head coach, who's a white boy, ended up getting another job, but yet you have Black head coaches that never get a job. And shout out to Dawn Staley for telling the truth about how a lot of this plays out. I digress.
Well, you don't have to digress. This is meaningful conversation here. And I want to put in a plug for me and Chris because we want some Ford Lightning trucks. So
I only want them if they're built Ford tough in the right place. Was a Ford family. First car was a 1986 Ford Escort with no air conditioning, no carpet, with the roll down windows, no radio.
Stick shift.
There was just a plate there. Stick shift, only 4 gears though. Couldn't afford the 5th gear. But it was new. It was new. Listen, there's something disturbing here that I've been taking note of, as you said, as you were talking. It's just like for a state that actually invented the Klan, and as of last week, watching that dude stand up and give a lecture to one of the young men, one of the brothers. You know, he was like, you wanted attention, now you got the attention. This is the attention that you wanted. You didn't act, you didn't behave. He sounded like some.
I was shocked that he said that because he tended to been one of the more moderate ones. So I was shocked to see him.
I mean, in a state that invented the Klan, he is moderate. So, but this is how you talk to Black people. And, it offends my sensibility as somebody who's not from there or lived there. And oftentimes when I travel, I notice that Black people in places that are seriously over oppressive start to take on a subservient eye level when they talk to people or whatnot. So the boss
level
hogs,
of deference.
a level of deference and a butler type of behavior. And then the boss hogs get used to that, right? So they talk to you like you to help, right? You a colleague, but they talk to you like you to help, like you little child, sit down type of thing. But a couple of things you said, this is supposed to be the party that is for liberty and freedom of speech and viewpoint heterodoxy and blah, 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 all this stuff they like to say. You just talked about they were leading on a CRT ban, which is basically a censorship, and it's a state-sponsored thought control law. That's what that is. Let's call things what they actually are, right? A ban on even studying reparations, right? Local areas. What happened to local control?
Right.
Local government can't study something? What says who? Right. Oh, the state. Oh, wow, I thought y'all didn't like the state. I thought y'all wasn't really about the government.
Small government until it's time to oppress us.
Wait, wow. What happened to small government, folks? So now we can't even study reparations at the local level. That's an affront to all the liberty, freedom, and justice stuff. They threatened Shelby County to take money off the table if they reappointed these brothers or one of these brothers back to his seat. Wait a second. What happened to local control? What happened to freedom and liberty and the ability to appoint your own people, whatnot? Now you're talking about taking money from TSU and wanting to take their board over and wanting to, like redo the whole school or whatnot. Boss hog behavior. This is all boss hog behavior. And the thing that you said to me that is the most ultimate kind of white right-wing power play is censure and expulsion. I don't like your t-shirt. I need you to apologize to me because I don't like your t-shirt. Hell no, you don't. Not in a free country where we've been free for like many, many, many years. You don't. Oh, I don't like what you said. I don't like how you said it. I don't like your dashiki. I don't like the way you did a thing. So censure and expulsion, and what Sharif said earlier, the power of the supermajority listen, I've said it many times, and I'm going to say it one last time. I'm going to move off this point. If white people decided tomorrow that every Black American had to wear orange jumpsuits as a daily costume, they could make that happen through law. If Black people decided that tomorrow, we could not make that happen in law, right? If you look at who the governors are, who the Senate is, who is representative, where the power is, what the courts look like. So this is, when you talk about voter apathy, I get it after a period of time, though. You only get, if you are realistic about the power structure, you start to see fewer and fewer options for changing it. I like what you said earlier. Stop the voter apathy thing, though. If the majority of people are under 40 who are a power base, and you're saying it would make major changes if they would vote, I think we need to start preaching to people like, listen, we understand why you would be apathetic, but there is a play here. There is a play that can make a difference. Now, your state, though, man, I did not know it was this bad. I'm kicking myself to not know that it was this bad.
Yeah. I say, it's so funny. I say, like, roaches like to hide in the dark. When the lights off, they come out, they tear up your house, they get into your stuff. And then when you cut the lights on, they like to scatter because they don't like to be seen. It's symbolic of what is happening in Tennessee. They have been able to disrupt and dismantle in the dark for so long. And finally, the lights have been turned on and we've been able to see who they are and what they're doing. And it is disheartening because you have so many people. So this state has so much potential to be great. And I really feel like the Republicans' goal of making this the most conservative state in the union is hurting so many people who can be of value to this state. I feel like this state is further going backwards. And it hasn't been Republican long. Democrats had control of Tennessee up until about 2018. And then about 2008, 2006, 2008. And then when Obama got elected, it became a supermajority Republican. And so
I wonder why.
Wow.
So the Republicans haven't had control of Tennessee for a long time. Democrats have mainly been in power, and we have our own inner party issues too. Don't let me not make it seem like we just perfect patty over here. Well, that's a story for another day. But for the most part, I feel like it is shining a light on the fact that Republicans cannot govern. They cannot govern outside their own biases on how they feel like this country should act. They cannot govern in bodies where people have different opinions on issues. They cannot govern on different populations of people. The Republican Party is failing at being able to maintain a democracy, and it's being shown here in Tennessee and on a national level. When you think about the Republican Party on a national level, no disrespect, but they're failing. From Reagan's failed war on drugs that has crippled the Black community and other communities economically, from George Bush's father, the first one who didn't do a good job, from his son, a failed war over in the Middle East, to Trump pretty much turning democracy on its head on a national level, and then looking at the states that are still Republican controlled, which is mostly the South, but we are also the poorest, the fattest, the unhealthiest, the least educated, the least paid states in this country, with some of the worst housing, crime, healthcare rates, education rates, everything you can think of. We at the bottom of the nation, and they're all Republican controlled. So not only is that my personal opinion, when you look at the facts and the data of states and how they're doing in comparison to other states, the ones that's under Republican control are doing the worst. So I think it's what you're seeing is them imploding on themselves, and hopefully we can start changing the dynamic of our leaderships. And my personal opinion is they need to be out of office. We need all these Republicans out of office. They don't know how to govern. They don't know what they're doing. They're sitting here, taking on racist rhetoric in order to fuel their base of people. And I think that it has been dangerous for democracy.
Yo, you had me. All when you were calling out the regimes and stuff, you had me. But then you missed one, right? You missed the Clinton regime, and you missed the goddamn Biden crime bill that equally crippled the Black community.
The crime bill was terrible.
All right, boom. We good now. We good. All right.
Good.
All right. I just want to say for the record. So first of all, we have to land this plane. Thank you all for a riveting discussion. We should roll into final thoughts. But on this last point, Ray, because you like to throw things in there or whatever from your Republican standpoint, I just want to say that the crime bill was a very Black bill. I love how people like to call it the Biden crime bill. I could add some names to that.
It was the Biden crime bill. It was the C. Dolores Tucker crime bill. It was a whole.
I was about to say, bro, I could add some names to it. That was a very Black bill. That was like that bill was so Black we should have called it Shaft.
Wow.
Anyways, listen. Let's roll into final thoughts. And we're gonna start with the Republican on the show. We're gonna start with Ray for final thoughts. Because shots fired, bro.
Listen, I'm so happy that the senator showed up and blessed us tonight. What an amazing show. I want to be able to support you in all that you do in the state of Tennessee. If you have national aspirations, I definitely want to come down and connect and make sure that I'm donating as a Republican to a sensible minded Democrat that don't want to give all my money away. You got my vote.
Thank you so much. And don't feel bad. My dad's a Republican, so you're fine.
Robert.
I want to thank the senator for your wisdom and courage. And I think you provide a lot of context for what's going on for folks who aren't there. I have a special place in my heart for Tennessee, because that's where my grandparents moved from, to Detroit, Newmarket, Tennessee. And I'll never forget everything I needed to know about the rural South. I learned in summers going to live with my Aunt Dot in Newmarket when there was like no lights outside. And so I just appreciate what you bring to the table, and just want to, be here to support you and, just cheer on Tennessee, unless y'all are playing any of my Michigan football teams, and I have to not be so supportive. But really appreciate you joining the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Senator Lamar, appreciate you very, very much. Looking forward to continuing to work together. I'm excited about what you painted as far as the youth. And I think that is the critical part, that level of apathy, that political apathy that they may have, experienced and proclaimed for a while. Like I recognize that in myself previously before I started voting, just not seeing any real sustained progress, from the political sphere. Every time I saw a movement and policy did happen, it was because people in the streets were moving and organizing and applying pressure. So I really thought, like, that's really where all the focus is. But I came to realize, yes, it's that, but it's also we need people, in the politics at those tables, in those houses. So thank you for your work. Thank you for pushing through despite the resistance that you experienced early on with the two Justin brothers, are experiencing. And you mentioned the light, and one of my favorite Memphians. I know she's not originally from Memphis, but Ida B. Wells, when she talks about the way to right wrongs is to shine the light of truth on them. And so encourage you as well as the youth of Memphis to continue doing that and continue applying the pressure exactly where it needs to be. So, thanks again for coming. Looking forward to visiting Memphis again and getting to see you and the youth in action.
Hey, you better bring a bulletproof vest down there.
All right. So anyways, we're gonna act like we didn't hear that. We're just gonna keep rolling on. Senator Lamar, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you. Appreciate all that you do. I only have a couple of points to close with. The first one is this, to me, always is a thing about how we need to support our Black elected officials. And we need to do it in some very practical ways. Number one, show up when we're supposed to show up. Show up and show out. Stop pretending like you support people in between elections when you don't do enough to make sure they are standing up for us. They're taking on unknown crap that you have never seen before. They're having private discussions that are demoralizing and humiliating, and having them walk that walk alone is ridiculous. We shouldn't do that. The second way, though, is their campaigns are made of money. So I always like to pitch that, like, we all can be a philanthropist. You all will hear me say this every time. We can give more than we do. Some of y'all are buying some things like, oh, we don't have money, we're poverty, blah, blah, blah. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Money is power. Make sure that our people in power have money to fight their fights. And, it takes a lot to be an elected official. It really does. So let's start supporting our people in all the ways that we possibly can. Show up with money, show up in person, show up with your voice, show up with your emails, show up with whatever it takes to make sure that they know that they're not alone. That's number one. The second thing is Tennessee is giving us a lesson right now in organizing and flashpoints, and it's a teachable moment. I hope we don't lose it. I hope that we learn something from this that we could teach in classrooms. Some of y'all are teachers who watch this show. I hope that some of you all develop a unit that is right now, like what's happening right now, and unpack all of this, because we unpack some of it on this show. I'm sure there's a lot more that can be unpacked. And that's all I got to say. I appreciate you so much for coming on, and we'll give you a final word because we want to support you.
Thank you so much. Well, gentlemen, I would say it's an absolute honor to be here on this show and just be able to authentically talk about many of the issues and what's going on amongst people who get it and can help and support. I want to reiterate that you're right. A light has been shined on Tennessee. We do need your help. So all the funders, all the organizers, all the voters, all the people watching, like, don't write Tennessee off because we're the South or Republican control. We are an oppressed state. We're not a Republican state. If we start doing the work, turning our people out, organizing, and continue to shine light on much of the discrimination that goes on in the legislature, I am confident that we can truly change the tide of this state. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a constant investment in dismantling the systemic structures that have been implemented in our state that have contribute to oppression. But we can do it together if people continue to care, invest, and come down and do the hard work and join me in that fight. Most importantly, I'm just honored to be in this role as a state senator. This is the greatest honor of my life, in order to advocate on behalf of 217,000 people and be the youngest woman and the youngest Black person in Senate history to serve. That's something that I bring great honor to my mom and my grandmother by being able to say that, but also my Black ancestors who sacrificed so much for me to be in this role and be able to bring life to the issues that impact the African-American community. So I'm just honored, and I am grateful for you guys' support. I'm also want to do a personal privilege and shout out to say I'm so excited to start with the Center for Black Educator Development with Sharif, helping with this area. And it's going to be great. What we're going to do for the Black education, Black teachers, that's something that I'm so passionate about, is education. I started in education before the legislature. And I think that when I think about many of the challenges that Black kids are facing when it comes to education, crime, housing, discrimination, all those things, having a Black teacher in the classroom, having a strong education can be the solution to that. And I just want to be a part of giving Black kids a chance. And but outside of that, I'll be knocking boots in the legislature with these Republicans so we can get it done. And thank you for supporting the Tennessee 3, well, the Tennessee 2, but bringing light to what the 3 those individuals did for the nation.
Actually, the Tennessee 3 is a Johnny Cash backup group.
Okay, if you want to take it way back. Anyways, this has been another episode of the H Black Hands.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Senator. And please, you have an open invitation to come back whenever there's something that you want to share with the world. And if you have others that think that they want to share with the world, this is the place to do it. Sunday nights. I'm thankful to you, my friends, family, and others who have joined on this Easter day. Christ is risen, and we are all better off for remembering to talk about politics and talk about life in terms of love. I am saying that from my own faith, and I know that other people have different faiths in this United States, but I have got a mic for a moment, so I'm just going to say that. Happy Easter to my friends and family who celebrate, and for those who don't, we love you, and everybody should just love each other. This is another episode of the Eight Black Hands. We'll see you next week for another riveting discussion.